Hello, everyone. This is James Templeton with the Templeton Wellness Foundation, and I'm so excited today. We're here with Joe Tippens, and Joe Tippens has quite a story to share with you. And before we get started, I want to ask you to check out our wellness site, templetonwellness.com, and also check out our restaurant guide, the Templeton List. It's our new restaurant guide. It has all the healthiest restaurants in America. I think you're going to really enjoy this because we all want to stay healthy. And if we travel and we're on the road, there are good places you can eat. It's not the same as eating at home, of course. But anyway, I think you're going to really find this very helpful. It's easy to use. And if you don't have my book, I used to have cancer, How I Found My Own Way Back to Health, please get it. You can get it at Amazon, or you can go to iusedtohavecancer.com, and we'll give you 3 free downloads. Check it out. You'll see it on the site. But anyway, let's get started here. And Joe, welcome. It's nice to have you today.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm in Berlin, Germany.
Well, that's unbelievable. You know, with the technology nowadays, it's like we can sit here and talk anywhere. So you have quite a story, and can you just tell us how this started and a little bit about your diagnosis and how this came to be?
Oh, sure. So in Labor Day weekend of 2016, 3 years ago, a little over 3 years ago, I had accepted a partnership position with a firm in Zurich, Switzerland, and had my Swiss green card and my apartment and my clothes were already moved, and I was moving to Switzerland. And I went into a weekend doc in a box urgent care center because I had a little bit of nasal congestion and I didn't want to get on the long flight. Mm-hmm. And the guy did a chest X-ray and he even brought me back to look at it. It didn't look like anything to me. And he was kind of my first savior. He just wouldn't take no for an answer, and he bugged me all day Sunday and all day Monday before my Tuesday morning flight to Zurich. And finally, Monday afternoon, I went in for a CT, and I had a tumor in my left lobe of my lower left lung, the size of my fist. With no symptoms. I had no symptoms, zero. I had no idea. And so I picked up the phone and called Switzerland and canceled my trip and canceled my acceptance of that job, and started a journey with MD Anderson in Houston, Texas. And, through a comedy of errors that weren't their fault, I got pneumonia along the way, and they had to change the regimen and double up the radiation. They fried my esophagus into bacon when nothing would go down or up. And instead of doing a feeding tube, I decided to live off of my fat stores and my muscle stores. And I went 8 weeks with no nutrients in my body, zero. And went in and IV fluids to keep me hydrated along the way. And in December of 16, which 3 months later, I had a scan and they said, well, we have great news, Joe. The great big monster tumor in your lower left lung is gone. And by the way, the biopsy revealed that it was small cell lung cancer, which is the more aggressive of the two kinds of lung cancer. The good news is that it was gone from the big one was gone from my lower left lung, but the bad news is it had metastasized entirely from head to toe. I had tumors in my neck, in my stomach, my liver, my bladder, my pancreas, and in my bones from head to toe. Wow. And I don't know if your listeners know, but statistically, when you have small cell lung cancer that metastasizes that far afield, you're a goner.
Yeah.
Basically, the life expectancy goes below 1%, and the median life expectancy is around 3 months. And so, that sobering news was given me, and I was pretty much told, go home and hire hospice.
Yes.
And here's where the plot thickens and my story changed. I got a call the next day
Mm-hmm.
from a large animal veterinarian, cattle and horse doctor in Western Oklahoma. I'm from Oklahoma. And I went to college with this guy, and I knew his children and everybody. And, excuse me, he basically told me this crazy story about a scientist at Merck Animal Health on the veterinary medicine side that had been implanting cancer in her mice brains and stomachs and livers, and was doing cancer research. And her entire mouse population, as the story was told to me, her entire mouse population came down with intestinal parasites. And so she gave what is given to all animals, whether it's fish all the way up to elephants in the animal.
Yeah.
Is a drug called fenbendazole, which is in the anthelmintic class of drugs. Anthelmintic only means to kill intestinal parasites.
Yes.
And lo and behold, she saved her mouse population from dying of intestinal parasites. But when she came back several weeks later, she cured the mice of cancer. And as the story went, she herself got 4-stage glioblastoma wrapped around her brainstem, was told to go home and hire hospice. And he decided what the heck, started taking this stuff, and cleared herself in like 12 weeks. So that's a short-winded answer to the very next day. I started taking fenbendazole, and I'm taking the veterinary product. The Dog Dewormer.
Is it like a pill or?
No, it's a dry, tasteless powder that people use to mix into dog food to deworm their dogs. And I do the same thing. I just mix it with yogurt or a smoothie, and sometimes I just throw it in the back of my throat and toss it down.
And is that something you had to have a prescription to have, or?
No, I mean, look, this is a veterinary medicine drug.
Yeah.
I'm not supposed to be taking it for human consumption, but what the heck?
Yeah.
Bought it at 1-800-PetMeds.com, and I'm such a good customer, I get a dog bone with each order. So, so I basically, through self-research, I did probably 2,000 or 3,000 hours of research myself, added a few other things to the regimen, which is now called the Joe Tippens protocol, which is beyond bizarre to me.
Yeah.
But I added curcumin, bioavailable curcumin, and CBD oil and vitamin E to the regimen. And I went through a period of unknown. I went all through January and February and March and April of 2017, waiting to die, because the median life expectancy was 3 months, and I was not supposed to survive. But I felt fine. There were no symptoms. I felt great. I was, working again. I went in for a scan the first week of May of 17, so 3.5 months later, and I was all clear.
Wow.
So a previous PET scan that lit up like a Christmas tree from my neck to my pelvis and in my bones and in all my internal organs was now gone completely. And it's called NED, no evidence of disease, as you know.
Yes.
And so I didn't fess up to my doctors what I had been doing, but they were all kind of in shock.
Thought it was just a miracle kind of thing, or is that what they were?
No, and to be honest with you, and I'm learning a lot more as we go here. We now have hundreds or thousands of patients using this now. But at the time, I was when it was put on a clinical trial, experimental drug, and they told me at the outset, this drug will not save your life. It will not put you in remission. Our best case scenario is it'll buy you a year or two. That was the best case. So I said, what the heck? And so the reason I really didn't tell them at that point was that I thought, I don't want to get kicked off this trial.
Yeah.
And so I waited until the May scan was clear. I waited until the July scan was clear, and then I waited until the September scan was clear. and then the trial was over. And after the trial was over and they couldn't kick me off of it, then I fessed up as to what I was taking.
Yeah.
And I've had some very interesting conversations with my physicians over the last 3 years since then. I'm now 30 months all clear, completely no evidence of disease now after being told no hope.
Now, what did the physician think about it? What you told him?
Well, there's the private physician that you've become a friend with behind a closed door, and there's the public physician who represents a major cancer hospital.
Yeah.
The private guy and the public guy are two separate things, right? So I think behind closed doors, he basically goes, okay, I admit what you did had an impact.
Mm-hmm.
But publicly as an institution, he can't make that statement, right?
Yeah.
And I don't blame him.
Did they think that this drug trial you were on is the reason, or?
Well, so the reason I don't think it is,
yeah,
is this immunotherapy drug is actually quite successful with non-small cell lung cancer.
Yeah.
But with small cell, it's not successful. I mean, it was an objective response trial, and the objective was to buy people an extra, 1.5 years.
Yeah.
And they judged the success or failure of the trial based on that objective. Well, there's not anybody else in total remission other than me. And so to me, there's no way that it had anything to do with my success.
Yeah.
And now that I have 100 other success stories in all different cancer types and all different stages, I am even more convinced than ever.
Yeah.
So I ended up writing the blog for a completely selfish reason.
Yeah.
My story spread like wildfire just by word of mouth. Forget social media, just by word of mouth. I was getting 20 and 30 calls a day from all over the world. And I was having to start from ground zero, just like I'm doing with you, telling this story of how I ended up in this position.
Yes.
And I decided, I can't be doing this all day long. I have a real job.
Yeah.
And so I wrote the blog so that I could just point people to go read it instead of me telling the story over and over and over again.
Right, right.
Not even intending or that the blog would go viral. And then it made my world even more complex because it did go viral.
Yeah.
And some of the stories of virality of a cancer story like this are just insane. But I had to set up a discussion group on Facebook by the same name, My Cancer Story Rocks, and then it went viral. And now then I had to engage volunteer moderators and administrators to manage the Facebook page because it's a full-time job, 24/7.
Sure.
So I've got volunteer administrators and moderators in the Southern Hemisphere, in Australia, New Zealand, and South Africa, and in the Northern Hemisphere here in over in the UK. And they have to. It's very diligent to keep all the riffraff out and all the multi-level marketers out and all the crazy people out.
Right.
And we're limiting that Facebook page to only cancer patients and caregivers.
Mm-hmm.
Not anybody can get in there.
Right.
And we're limiting it to the discussion of the protocol that saved me and now 100 other people.
Wonderful.
And so there's people mad at us because they can't get in, and they're getting rejected, and they want in and they can't get in, or some of their posts are being deleted because we police it very tightly. We want people to feel free to post very private medical information on a public forum, and the only way you can do that is to control it very tightly. And it's unfortunate that we have to control it that way, but you do. Now, since then, what's even crazier is a PhD student at Arizona State University, Chinese, translated the blog into 2 different languages, and without even asking my permission, just did it, which I'm okay with. I don't care. I'm not trying to make money off this. He posted the blog in China. I didn't even know he did. And about 3 weeks ago, I got a call from the editor of Beijing News, which is owned by the Chinese government. And the guy spoke perfect English, almost with a British accent, it felt like, and told me that I was a rock star in China, and that the Chinese website had 3.5 million hits, and that this is just nuts, and that he estimated that there were between 30 and 50,000 people in China on the protocol. And it's just mind blowing, that this is happening, and it's really out of control.
Yeah, it's amazing, though. It's amazing, what you did. It's amazing that your friend, the veterinarian,
Well, it's first of all, it's amazing that a weekend emergency clinic doctor wouldn't take no for an answer. I had no symptoms. I was heading to Zurich. He stopped me and saved my life.
Yeah.
And then a horse doctor and cattle doctor in Western Oklahoma saves my life. And I felt compelled to give back, so I put this blog up, and now it's become a life all of its own, and I'm trying to manage it while I have a career.
Let me ask you now. Before this, did you notice that you had digestive problems or issues, at all?
No,
like sensitivity in your
No.
gut or bowel or anything?
No. I swear to you, there is no correlation to this being an anti-parasitic and an anti-cancer drug. It's serendipity and coincidence that the molecule goes and targets cancer cells in 3 pathways. And let me tell you, and the scientists, and this is probably the most disgusting thing, I now believe the scientists have known this molecule would work this way for decades. 30, maybe 40 years they've known.
Yeah.
And some scientists just published a very comprehensive research report on the molecule and the 3 pathways by which it's killing cancer.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing it's doing is inside a cancer cell is a microtubule. If you think of the pillars inside of a building to keep the ceiling up and between the wall and the ceiling. Well, those microtubules also are paramount in a cancer cell's ability to divide and multiply and reproduce rapidly. And for somehow, some way, this antiparasitic drug fenbendazole is going in and knocking out those microtubules. That's number 1. Number 2, which I think is even more impressive, is cancer cells can't survive without metabolizing sugar.
Yes.
And the fenbendazole is proven scientifically. They know now that it's interrupting the cancer cell's ability to metabolize sugar.
So it's basically a sugar blocker.
It's blocking the metabolism of the sugar.
Yeah.
And the third thing, which is the most impressive of the 3, is healthy people have a very healthy level of a cancer-killing gene in their body called P53. You may have heard of it.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, when you hear of P53 mutations, and it's basically that the P53 has mutated some way to it stops killing cancer.
Mm-hmm.
Or somebody's titer level of P53 for some way somehow has just dropped below the ability to continue to fight cancer.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the third thing that this drug is doing is spiking the new healthy production of new P53 in the body. And so that's significant in a lot of ways.
Yes.
I believe that those 3 pathways, every kind of cancer, whether it's a blood-borne cancer like leukemia or lymphoma or multiple myeloma, or a solid tumor cancer like I had in lung cancer, or brain cancer or colorectal cancer or melanoma. All cancer cells have microtubules that are necessary for their survival and replication. All cancer cells have to be able to metabolize sugar. And and P53 kills all cancer cells in healthy people.
Yes.
And this drug is doing all three of those things simultaneously at the cellular level, which has nothing to do with parasites. So we get a bunch of people on these Facebook pages and on the blog saying, well, I've known for years that, it was parasites that caused cancer. And I'm going, stop. This has nothing to do with parasites. This drug serendipitously and coincidentally has these three functions against cancer cells that was never intended when it was invented as a parasitic drug.
Yeah. Now, is there any side effects when you take this? Do you feel anything?
I didn't, but I know from having hundreds of people report in, I've got basically my own unofficial clinical trial going on with 1,000 patients, thousands of patients, I should say. And about 5% of the people report mild diarrhea as the only side effect and some mild stomach discomfort. But if it's only 5%, I would say mathematically some percentage of those got it from something else, or something else caused the diarrhea and not this. So it's not enough to worry about it.
It makes sense, though, if it's a parasite designed for parasites, that it would, start pushing things, moving things, because, just like an herbal formula or something, it's got to do something, if it's going to be effective at all for horses or, or animals, is what it's really designed for. So
in my blog, I had to update the blog recently for dosages because. And I'm not playing doctor. I've disclaimed throughout the whole thing that, hey, I'm only qualified to tell my story. I'm not qualified to give advice to anybody.
Right.
But when I was passed this information kind of secondhand, I was told that this drug could negatively impact the liver function. And so you have to be careful with dosages. And so my original doses that I followed that cured me and I've given to hundreds of thousands of others is to do it 3 days a week, 3 consecutive days a week, and then take 4 days off every week. I have since learned that that's too conservative and that the body can withstand more. Johns Hopkins did a clinical trial on a sister drug called mebendazole that is approved for human consumption. And they determined that you could take 400 milligrams daily, long-term safely. So it's very safe. The downside risk is virtually zero.
Yeah.
And so where I try to, my most frustrating thing that's happened in the last 30 months is people calling me and saying, well, I waited too long. I just waited. I didn't believe the story until I was given no other hope, no other chance, and I waited too long. And that's very frustrating to me.
Yeah, it really is.
So here's the message I like to give to people is there's so many people taking this all over the world. And, kind of rule number 1 in medicine is don't make it worse. And this is not going to hurt you. The downside risk is virtually zero. But we now have, because we have 100 other success stories, we now have ample evidence that there's upside return here. And if the downside risk is zero and the upside is there, I can't promise you it'll cure you, but I can pretty much promise you it's not going to kill you.
And you're also doing these other things too along with it. And have you changed your diet or anything?
I should have. I don't practice what I preach. I'm a real foodie, and I travel in business. I eat at fine restaurants, and I love food, and so I haven't done a very good job of that. Although if I was advising people, I'd say, cut out all the sugar or anything that converts to sugar.
Right.
and that would be about my only advice. Although I don't follow it, so here we go.
Yeah. Well, but you're doing great, and you've got the science behind it. I mean, as far as the tests, you've done tests to show that there's no signs of the cancer anymore, and I mean that's
Well, not just me, but I have there's a lot of argument and debate on the internet. Anytime people get a hold of something like this, they want to debate it. Just they overthink it and they over research it. And so there's a lot of people out there saying, well, even Joe doesn't know that it was this other experimental drug that saved him and not this. And all these other people are still doing their chemo and their radiation and their other immunotherapy and their targeted therapy, and they're doing this at the same time. So we don't know. Well, I'm so anxious to get this database audit done because I do know of 25 cases where people were sent home to higher hospice, go home and die, basically, and they didn't take anything else but this protocol, and they were saved. So
now they're relatively healthy.
Yeah, in quite a few cases, completely no evidence of disease. In there's special cases like the deadliest of all cancers, pancreatic. And I'll be honest, there's mixed results with pancreatic. Some people it hadn't worked at all for them. And but then I've got like 5 cases where it's worked on pancreatic. And in those cases, they're unique. These people were given less than 3 months to live, and this has not eliminated their cancer. They're not they're not cancer free, but it's shrunk it back and kept it at bay to allow them to live a normal lifestyle way beyond their life expectancy.
Right.
So I say that's a victory, even though they still have cancer.
Yeah.
And then there is 2 cases of pancreatic cancer, and I don't know what their stage was. It'll get done in the audit. There are 2 cases where they're completely NED, starting with pancreatic cancer, which is very crazy. Well, mine's crazy too. Small cell lung cancer is second deadliest, right to widely metastasized small cells, right up there with pancreatic. You just don't survive it.
Well, 1%. I mean, that's usually like get your affairs in order quick.
Yeah, well, it's less than 1%. They don't say how far less.
Yeah, but anytime it's down that low, it's usually get things together quick because smell the roses quick because there's not much time. So I've talked to many people that have had different kinds of cancer, and it's remarkable, some of these stories, and everybody has different stories. Some are similar, some are different. So the things that you're doing, along with the curcumin, you were talking about that, and you're using, curcumin there's a lot of good things about curcumin. Can you?
Oh, by the way, my doctor at MD Anderson, I went in for my last scan just last week. He told me that there's new research that says curcumin also spikes healthy P53.
Yeah.
So there you go. Now, I have to warn people and say, if you're going through chemo or you're in blood thinners, you probably ought to lay off the vitamin E and the curcumin and just go with the fenbendazole and CBD. But for the most part, I think it's a pretty healthy and safe regimen.
Now the CBD, we didn't talk about that. The CBD, how do you use that?
I do 25 milligrams a day underneath my tongue, sublingual, and I don't do it for pain or anxiety or sleep or any of those other reasons. I believe it has separate cancer-killing properties by itself. That's not proven yet, but I believe that.
Yeah, so you're throwing some good things at it, and
that's my opinion. Yeah,
it seems to be working for you.
I tell people I don't recommend THC in my blog, just simply because not everybody can get it and they're confused by it. And
Yeah.
that. The truth is, if you can work yourself up to a one-to-one relationship between CBD and THC and do that every day, the CBD offsets the hallucinogenic or psychotropic effects of the THC and offsets it. You won't get high off of it.
Yeah. So
and
you don't get high from what you're doing at all. It doesn't make you high or anything.
no,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
I don't know. And I believe that 10 years from now, we're going to be looking at this and saying, well, duh, we've always known that those compounds helped cancer.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing what you're doing, and like you say, I mean, everybody's different, and what works for you is working for other people also. So and it doesn't.
I'm also tracking failures too. I'm not
Yeah.
just tracking successes.
Yeah.
And I believe, I mean, it's not a panacea that's going to cure every cancer in every patient every time.
Mm-hmm.
But I do believe that the downside risk is zero, and there's ample evidence that it could help. So why not, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the people so far, I've talked to the families of all the deceased so far, at least the ones I could get a hold of and talk to. And to a person, every one of them believes that they just started too late.
Yeah. Because it probably with anything, it takes a few months to really kind of get things to kick in.
Well, I think at least 12 weeks. I tell people don't even expect anything before 12 weeks.
Yeah, I know that when I was going through my cancer thing many years ago, I started changing my diet and did a lot of other things, but I didn't notice a lot at the beginning, but after 3 or 4 months, it was amazing. I started to feel like a different person. My whole body started to change, and I think it's like anything. It takes time. People have to know they got to have time. And if you mess around with cancer and especially at a very risky stage, you can't mess around. You got to get on something. And I believe, and I was going to ask you that, some people do better than others with anything just because. And the thing is if you believe in what you're doing, really believe, and you really believe that you can beat it, you can overcome, a 1% chance or less, or even 10 or 20% chance of survival, then that is a big plus, because believing I believe, is 50% or more of healing.
I could not agree more. Are you familiar with Bruce Lipton?
Yes.
Okay. Well,
yes, I am.
Bruce Lipton has proven scientifically that that's true.
Yes.
He literally connected the dots between the brain and what happens at the cellular level. And it's bypassing DNA as the signal.
Yes.
The brain is the signal. And that goes both ways. If you're a negative thinker, you're going to send negative thoughts to your cells.
Yeah.
If you're a positive thinker, you're going to send positive vibes to the cells.
And the immune system is so important. And if you're negative and you're around negative people and you don't believe in it, you think, well, I'll just try it. I don't know if it'll work. Maybe it won't. Maybe it will. That's not the attitude. The attitude is, if it'll work for you and it'll work for these other people. And I'm not saying exactly what you did, but just in general, of a person that's been successful, then there's got to be something out there for me too. So, why can't I find something? And there's a lot of things, that first people can do.
I can't explain why, but the day I was told that it would metastasize throughout my whole body and I had less than a 1% chance of survival, for some reason, it didn't even faze me.
Yeah.
And this was before I had the conversation with the veterinarian. I just was confident, and I knew that I would figure out a way to beat it.
Yeah. So and you knew inside that was kind of your intuition, or maybe from your connection from the higher place, whatever you want to call it.
Yep.
And knowing that, hey, I'm going to find something. There's got to be something I can do, and I'll find it, kind of thing. That sounds very familiar to me. And but I also know that it sounds familiar to me that to be scared to death at the beginning, I was, and it took a little nudging for me to somebody to get my attention to think that, hey, start thinking positive, quit thinking negative.
Yeah. Well, I really recommend people go out and watch the Bruce Lipton YouTube videos of his lectures, because he's a molecular biologist, MD professor at Stanford. He's no slouch.
Yeah.
Improving scientifically that connection between positive thinking and
Yeah.
the activity at the cellular level is like groundbreaking.
The people that I talk to that seem to do the best are the ones that have that strong will.
Yeah.
And, the will, and not saying it always kicked in, from the beginning, but once it kicked in, and it kind of like, get out of my way. I'm going to go to battle with this. I'm going to go to war. I'm going to beat it. If anybody can do it, I can do it. If I'm going to give it my all, those are the kind of people that get well, compared to the ones that just sort of put their hands in their life in someone else's hands. And I see that over and over and over. And there's all walks of people. Some are very religious, some are very spiritual, some are just people. But they all have this will that, I'm going to do what it takes. And if it doesn't work for me, it won't work for anybody else. And that's so important. And the things that you're saying is going to give people a lot of things to think about anyway. Let's put it like that.
Well, if they want to read about it, it's an interesting name. There's a new extension that replaces .com that's called ROCKS, Rocks.
Yeah.
And it's mycancerstory.rocks.
Well, I want to thank you, Joe. It's a wonderful story, and you're doing some wonderful work, and you're helping a huge amount of people, especially in China, it sounds like. And, that's very, very, very interesting. But I want to thank you for being with me and for your time and you're over in Germany, and we're over here in Idaho. So it's a long ways, but it works and it's great. And I want to thank you so much, and good luck going forward with everything, and keep up, the good work, and keep feeling well, and I'll keep up with everything you're doing. I'm excited about it.
If you got any questions, give me a shout, and I appreciate you inviting me.
All right, and folks, this is Joe Tippens, and check him out, and it's a pleasure, and remember to go to templetonwellness.com, see our other survivor stories. Everybody has different stories. I'm not saying that one is supposed to work for everyone, but it's all about to inspire you, to give you hope. And that's what we're all about. And please check out our restaurant guide again, if you didn't hear me talk about it earlier. And check out my book, I Used to Have Cancer, How I Found My Own Way Back to Health. And that's my story. So anyway, this is James Templeton. We'll see you next time. Have a wonderful, healthy rest of your day.